everybody to the second day of the EQ conference. I'm happy to see you. I'm happy you're here today. I will be your host for today, and I'm so glad to see your beautiful pictures and faces. We're sorry we're a bit late, but here we are. We're very thankful. We're very thankful. And since yesterday we talked about purpose, yesterday we touched on we had very amazing panelists. We had a very amazing panel discussion, and our breakout rooms were amazing as well. So welcome to day 2 of the EQ conference. And today, as we focus on change and readiness, I would love to welcome, I hope our host is here for today. I would love to, okay, I see she has not joined yet. So no worries. I would like to say that today our focus is on change readiness. And what we're going to touch on is what changes and how have we been experiencing change and how can we cope with the change that's happening right now, considering we're in the middle of global pandemic. And so as we continue, I would love to welcome Wanjira Mathai, who is going to give the opening remarks for today. And she will be introducing our keynote speaker. Welcome, Wanjira Mathai.
Irene, thank you very much. And thank you for all you're doing. It happens sometimes, these technology things, but we are here and we are on track. It's great to see you as well. What an amazing day we had yesterday. Welcome everybody on behalf of all of us hosting. I think we got off to an inspiring start, a start on purpose. And today we will be talking about change. It's no coincidence that this conference is titled A Whole New World. Because it's a whole new world. We have been living through what we thought would probably be a short pandemic time, and then it's become this 2 years of adjusting, reassessing, and understanding who we are in new ways. This conference, as we were thinking about how to frame it, we came up with a whole new world inspired by this wonderful essay. If you haven't read it, you should. The Pandemic is a Portal. And this was written by Arundhati Roy, and it framed it perfectly because it said, historically, pandemics have forced humans to break with the past and imagine the world anew. This one is no different. It is a portal. It is a gateway between one world and the next. And the truth of the matter is we have to find a way to walk into this new world with new resolve, emotionally and physically equipped. And that's what excites me about this conference. It's about getting there. A quick recap of yesterday before we get into today's business. Wonderful day yesterday. Keynote, Josh, always so inspiring. Working on purpose. And 3 things I took away. We have to be patient when we're working on purpose. It's not quick work, but it energizes us. So who's counting? It will take as long as it takes. We should also stop seeking a work-life balance. I thought that was interesting, and focus on work-life integration and strive to have our work aligned to purpose. And then we also learned that we can get mad, but that outrage has to trigger action. And so mad outrage triggered into action. So many other takeaways, but we'll stop it there for now. Please, just to remind you, continue to tag us on social media at EQ for Africa, at 6 seconds EQ, with the hashtags EQ for Africa and hashtag 6SEQ. Without any further ado, I want to welcome a dear friend, Jane Morrison, who in many ways is my mentor in this journey, my teacher. It's a pleasure, Jane, to welcome you today. Jane is a regional director for 6 Seconds in our region, Middle East, Africa, and India, as well as a board member of the nonprofit network. She's also the founder and executive partner of Dynamic Learning and has decades of experience in EQ. And I'll tell you what, guys, it shows. And her passion in maximizing the potential of people by supporting them to unlock their value and increase performance personally and professionally. I honestly do not know anyone whose infectious enthusiasm and brilliance makes the EQ journey for so many of us absolutely rewarding. Jane brings decades of leadership in this area, along with extensive expertise, consulting, teaching, coaching, designing. It's an absolute design. Jane, you are simply the best. And how amazing. If you want to read more about Jane, her long bio is in the 6 Seconds website, but I want to get out of the way and allow this EQ powerhouse to inspire us today. Join me, ladies and gentlemen, in welcoming my friend and mentor, Jane Morrison.
Yeah, morning, Wandera, and thank you for that amazing introduction. It's a pleasure to be here with you, and it's a pleasure to be part of this amazing EQ for Africa conference. It doesn't seem 2 years ago that we were all together, and I just want to say congratulations to all our wonderful 6 Seconds preferred partners in Africa who have brought this together. So well done to all of you. So over the past 18 months, we've all experienced change. Collectively, we've lived through huge, unprecedented experience. What was, for many of us, is no more. And the portal that Wandera was talking about to the future, that elusive new normal, awaits us. To start off with, I'd actually like to get you to think of a change you're involved in. It could be shifting to a post-COVID workplace, some large organizational transformation project that you're part of, or something more personal. Maybe it's a career change as a result of the past 18 months. Make a note of this and then consider what are some of the feelings, the emotions that you are experiencing when you consider this change. Take the minute, be honest, jot them down. I promise I won't ask you to share them. Given the global pandemic, I have no doubt that each and every one of us has experienced some degree of change. Many of us with reluctance. However, change is constant. It's inevitable. And as human beings, we are actually really great at change. If we weren't, we would have died out with the dinosaurs. But the reality is, and all research points to this, that 70% of change efforts fail. So what would it take for you in your change adventure to stay in the successful 30%? When it comes to change, the general assumptions are that 1, change is a linear process. Commonly, people plan for change as if there's a clear beginning, middle, and end. This is where we are now. Here are some key steps, and voila, we will be changed. In an organization, someone creates a plan, and the expectation is that people will meekly follow the plan, and the change will be done. In much the same way, we do it with ourselves, to exercise more, to eat less, to be healthier, and so on. Number 2, change is about having clear systems or processes. These are really important, but they are not the right place to start. For example, imagine a company that wants to improve communication. So they initiate a new feedback system. But no one uses it because they don't trust the management. Number 3, change is rational. From this mindset, you'll often hear someone present a plan about change. And then when people don't jump on board, the hyper-rational manager will say something like, no, you don't understand. Let me explain to you more clearly. And yes, a good explanation can help, but the central challenge of change is really based on data. Take, for example, someone who wants to lose weight. Do you think they're going to be shocked when you say to them, hey, salads are more healthy than French fries? And will that stop them eating them? Change is not just rational. When it comes to human beings, it is a deeply emotional process that requires transitioning from the current state to the future state, leaping through that portal. And often, this isn't simply a one-way shift, rather a seesawing process as the change evolves. Historically, alongside these assumptions, it's been common practice, and in some places it still is, to use the 3 F's to drive change: force, fear, and facts. You have no choice. This is the new system, you will follow it. If you don't change, you'll lose your job. If you lose your job, you'll join 25% of people who don't have jobs in the region. Force, fear, facts. Whilst the 3 F's might work, they motivate the wrong thing. It's normal when we are in a change to experience big emotions. And the 3 F's can motivate big emotions, but they motivate us to protect, to move away. When we feel pushed or forced to change, the natural human reaction is to resist, to fall into the cycle of resistance, experiencing things like judgment, frustration, even fear. These kinds of feelings are signals of resistance, of moving away, of retreating from risk, retreating from change. The primary purpose of emotions is to focus our attention on the immediacy. And these feelings motivate people to protect themselves. They push change backwards. Now, consider these emotions against the current global background of rising stress, a shift to greater caution, and the observation of risk. In this context of tremendous stress, global data also shows diminishing trust. And in turn, 6 Seconds research shows diminishing risk tolerance. Risk tolerance is the ability to use emotional intelligence to maintain an equilibrium in the face of challenge, of change. But without trust, people are not able and open to take risk. When we don't trust, we hesitate to collaborate. Why would I collaborate with people I don't trust? So add declining collaboration into the mix, and it becomes increasingly difficult to leverage the EQ talent of imagination. Imagination being the ability to use EQ to find new options, find solutions to challenges. All of this, of course, has a direct impact on change. Whilst fear, frustration, judgment are not bad feelings, feelings are merely data, and if you feel them for a reason. But given this context, they are feelings that will restrict change, especially when people's appetite for risk is low. Sometimes that's actually needed. For example, if it's a risky change, these feelings will cause us to question, hesitate, maybe even challenge the change. Remember, the feelings are not bad. They're merely data. However, one thing is clear: if we stay in the state of resistance, change will stall out. To fuel change, we need to build an environment that fosters both innovation and risk tolerance. We need people to be open, to be adaptable. So we need the opposite of protection. If protection is this, we need people to be doing this. So just as there are feelings of resistance during change, we can, and even at the same time, experience other feelings that drive change and open us up to be more adaptable. Feelings like curiosity, excitement, courage. Curiosity provides the impetus to find new solutions. Excitement ignites our motivation to take action. Whilst courage does not necessarily mean the absence of fear, rather it's the ability to acknowledge fear, knowing that things might not work out, and also tapping into other feelings to create engagement, to build momentum, to move forward, to fuel change. These types of feelings motivate innovation. They motivate risk-taking. They motivate adaptability. The things that we need to drive change. They also help people to stay open to new ideas and new learning. Now, imagine these two sets of feelings on either side of a seesaw. On one side, you have the feelings of resistance, and on the other side, the feelings of engagement. Take a look at the feelings you listed about your change at the start of my address. Which side of the seesaw are they on? Are they creating resistance, or are they fueling your change? Take a moment to consider this. Now back to my earlier question, what does it take to be in the 30% of successful change efforts? The 6 seconds change map provides us with a process and is built on 3 key factors. One is that change is a process of action learning. It requires the formation of new neural pathways in the brain. The neuroscience that underpins change is referred to as neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity describes the potential of brain cells to replace old connections with new connections based on new learning, new information, new experiences. Essentially, what we're referring to is the rewiring of the brain to form new neural pathways that result in new ways of thinking, new ways of acting, and new ways of feeling that ultimately support the change. An important factor here is that at a neurobiological level, the process of neuroplasticity is facilitated by the neurotransmitter dopamine, the trust hormone. So the need for trust is therefore deeply embedded in the change process. And this leads me to the second fact, the fact that change is not linear. Rather, it should be viewed as an iteration of cycles. The first step is to engage, to create an environment of psychological safety, to initiate that emotional shift, to build buy-in to change, and to establish trust in the process. Step 2 is to activate a process where people feel safe and supported in trying out new skills, and sometimes not succeeding, but learning from failure. And the final step, the third step, which so often is forgotten, is to pause and reflect, to acknowledge what's worked and to learn from failure, and to prepare to build on both. An important point here is that this is a cyclical process, and you can only start with as much change as there is trust. If there is only this much trust in an organization, you can only start by doing this much change. If there's only this much trust and you start doing this huge transformational project, you're heading for sure trouble. The idea with the cyclical approach is that with each iteration, as trust is built, the momentum towards success grows. The third fact is that feelings are an integral part of change. Emotions drive people, and ultimately, people drive the performance to harness change. As I've mentioned, trust is integral to successful change. In addition, at every step of that change process, every step of this cycle, there are emotional transitions that create a shift between the cycle of resistance and the cycle of engagement, balancing the seesaw. And just as much as people can transition from resistance to engagement as they transition through the process, they can also transition backwards. In fact, the change process, this transitioning between resistance and engagement is natural and normal. So acknowledging these three key points, building them into your change plan, is crucial to creating a successful change strategy. Based on the writing of change guru Alan Deutschman, there is one further key element that initiates change and that fuels the momentum towards success. A relationship that creates hope. The way Deutschman describes this and explains it is that when people are in change and feel stuck in that seesaw, they feel hopeless. And often they'll start telling themselves, oh, this will never work, I can't do it. And so it becomes a self-perpetuating prophecy. It doesn't work. But when there is someone, a mentor, a leader, a coach, a friend, a therapist, a person who inspires hope, the person is then willing to step forward and try again. Of course, that's not sufficient. Everything else needs to be in place, but it does reinforce the need within the change strategy to identify change leaders who will walk the talk, to create an environment of psychological safety in which trust flourishes. Trust that's needed to fire imaginations, and where people are celebrated for taking risks towards future success. Whilst the pandemic may still be hovering, creating physical and mental challenges for people, the good news is that based on the 6 Seconds 2021 Global State of the Heart data, which is going to be released on Thursday, the EQ competency of exercising optimism is riding high in Africa. This is the competency that allows us to see beyond the present and look to the future. It allows us to see possibilities. It allows us to find solutions to complex problems. It fuels adaptability. It stimulates the resilience to bounce up and bounce forward. And it provides us with the essential ingredient that Doshman spoke of. Hope. Hope that initiates change and fuels the momentum towards success. Yesterday in his keynote, Josh, the 6 Seconds CEO, shared with you that from the same research, the EQ competency of pursue noble goals is higher in Africa than anywhere else in the world. So in spite of the challenging times we live in spite of the challenges that still exist around us, the challenges that perhaps will linger for some time to come, if we couple this pursue noble goals, this overarching sense of purpose, with a collective strength in doing the hard work of exercising optimism, it will fuel momentum across the continent towards a more positive future. So as we end, I'd like to ask you to consider your own change again, the one that you jotted down at the first start, and think about what action can you take based on this conversation to keep in the 30% of success, to be in the 30% of success that's going to create this whole new world. Thank you. Back to you, Wanjera.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Jane, and thank you for your wise words. I remember when you're asking about the emotions that we were going through as we go through change, and the first thing I wrote down was fear. And after your very nice keynote, I now start to understand that I need to trust myself and others, because trust is the chief driver, and trust is very important in maintaining an equilibrium in the change process. Thank you very much, Jane. And as we move on to the next phase, which will be the breakout sessions, it would be important to just think, and the interactive breakout sessions will just, you know, explore what it takes to change, and this means the shift from being made to change and being a change maker, just as Jane had initially mentioned. So in yesterday's breakout sessions, we explored purpose and a vision on where to go. So now that we talked about purpose, the next phase is pretty much how do we step in another direction, and how to practice emotional intelligence, and how can emotional intelligence help as we go through change. So as we go into a breakout session, our 3 facilitators will be Carrie Catton, the founder of Mila. And then we have the second one, we have Nokubonga Mbaga, who's the founder of Self Insights, and Libby Edmonds, the founder of Equilibrium. So as we go into our breakout sessions that are fun, if you were here yesterday, you know they are fun. As we go into our breakout session, please let us have an open mind, and also do not forget to tag us at EQ for Africa on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and all the other social media sites. And our hashtags are EQ for Africa, and we're going to also add the more tags onto the chat box below. All right, I hope we're all ready to go to our breakout rooms. Thank you very much.
breakout session. I'd love to get, before we move to our final part of the day and our panel discussion, if we could get maybe 3 or so people to share their greatest insights from the breakout. And it would be great to have someone from each of the breakout sessions. So we could have someone from the breakout session. Bongi, I see you on my screen. So let me go to you. If you were with Bongi in her breakout, anyone from that group who would like to just share their takeaway, feel free to unmute yourself. And anyone else who wants to type in the chat, you're welcome to do that as well. So who would like to share their greatest takeaway as we've been exploring how to leverage emotional intelligence for change? Any takers? I'm looking on the chat to see if there's anything on the chat. I'm not seeing anything yet from anyone. Anyone from that group who would like to share? All right, since no one's volunteering, let me go and see who was in that group, and I will see who I will pick on. So we had, let me have a look. Anne Karia. Let me pick on you. You're the first name in that group. That's the challenge. You're starting with the letter A. And can you just share an insight? Are you able to share an insight, a takeaway for you from that breakout?
This was one of the most powerful exercises I think we can do around change. I love the fact that we had to explore what didn't work and what worked, and look through that and get our feelings and come up with a new change story. For me, in our current situation, for everyone, I think is applying optimism, and really it was powerful. It was powerful. We had a beautiful session with Nakubonga.
Yay! And
Yes.
can you imagine, Anne, you were going to deny us of that great insight? Thank you so much.
I was giving the opportunity to somebody else. But it was really awesome. Yes. And to know the greatest lesson is that, you know, you'll not fear. There's no absence of fear, but it's how to get courage within that fear to move forward into the change. It was beautiful. Thank you so much. It was a wonderful session.
Thank you very much. At this time, I would like to hand over the program as we move into the final segment of our day. And I'm really excited to invite our moderator for the panel discussion, who is going to lead a conversation about change. And that is Katlego Mohono, the founder and CEO of Near Delta Limited. The panel discussion is called The Power of Emotional Intelligence to Navigate Change. But what I will do now is hand over to Katlego to take us into the discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mocha. Can you hear me loud and clear?
Yes, we can.
Awesome. Hello, everyone. Bonjour, sanbonani, habari yenu, and welcome to, I guess, today's panel discussion, as Mocha has said, titled Getting Unstuck. Because sometimes in life we can get so stuck in certain spaces. And yeah, today is really thinking about how do we use the power of EQ to navigate change. Yes, by way of introduction, my name is Katlego Mohono, based here in Johannesburg, South Africa, but do work all over the continent. Now, it was Heraclitus who once said, the only constant in life is change. But also, you know, if we all have to acknowledge it, whether it's in our personal lives or in our professional spaces, change can be hard, man. You know, whether you're trying to build that, you know, summer body personally, or you're trying to, you know, do some, you know, change in your organization, change is just complex. But, you know, the Harvard business professor and author John Kotter once stated in 1996 that 70% of all change efforts fail. Right? That's really shocking, right? Considering, I mean, that change is the only constant. So if change is the only constant and 70% of change efforts fail, then we're in trouble, guys. We can just all agree that, no, we are all in trouble. So as you know, millennials would say, then what must happen now, right? What must happen now in the world we're living in if we have to change, but change can be so difficult. So today's panel tries to help us figure out how to go about making those changes, but also more importantly, how we might leverage emotional intelligence to drive sustainable change. I am excited to be joined by 4 exceptional ladies. I mean, I am officially a thorn amongst the roses, and the roses they are, because I've gotten to interact and engage with them. I do see Tolu, I do see Johnny, I do see Mucha. I don't see Alison just yet, but yeah, okay, she's not in yet, but when she joins us. But yeah, let me, it's both my honor and privilege to introduce our guests today. I mean, starting off with someone who, is someone that often doesn't need an introduction in spaces like these, but it's worth introducing her and saying Mucha Mlingo is one of the most formidable, thought leaders, change drivers on the continent when it comes to the space of EQ. She is the founder and lead change maker of PTS Africa, and also the 6-second preferred partner in Kenya. Now, a fun fact about Mucha that she probably doesn't even know that I know about her is that not only is Mucha like the extraordinary woman that she is in so many areas, but Mucha is one of the most phenomenal singers I've heard. Once upon a time, I had the privilege of hearing Mucha sing at a church in Nairobi, and I was like, whoa, this lady can sing, so it's just like, yeah, there it is, a fun fact you did not know about Mucha. Next, ladies and gentlemen, is Ms. Johnny Paddy, who is the CEO of Resilient People. She is also the 6-second preferred partner for South Africa. And she has, we've been doing a number of assessments, and she has her own assessment called Resilient Up, which is kind of based on this like framework of Kinak. It's time in South Africa. Say, hey, it's time. And she's all about that. Now, I mean, sticking with the musical theme, Johnny's all-time favorite song is Aretha Franklin's Respect, right? And I guess it's such a basis for what human interaction actually should and could be about, really that foundation of respect. Next is Ms. Tolulupa Agiri, who is the Group Chief Human Resource Officer at InterSwitch Group. Fun fact about Tolu Lope is she is a mother of 2 lovely children, and her favorite pastimes is really spending time with her family and mentoring young women. So really, again, an amazing woman who's doing amazing work in so many different areas. And lastly, but definitely not least, is Ms. Elson Wainaina, who is the head of learning and development at FSD Africa. Now, I once asked Elson, if she could trade lives with someone for a day, who that person would be. And her response was, well, 2 women. One is Michelle Obama, and the second one is Angela Merkel, right? And these, again, are exceptional, extraordinary women. So, ladies and gentlemen, these are our panelists for today. I mean, again, I didn't read all their bios, because if we did read all their bios, basically this panel would just be me reading their bios. So please check them out on LinkedIn, connect with them, and you'll hear. I mean, I'm so excited for this conversation because it promises to be thoroughly engaging. But talking about engagement, I would also love for us to have this as a conversation with everyone. And I see there's already people who are putting things in the chat. Yeah, Pete, I guess we'll close the session with a song, right? Yeah, we'll have Johnny and Mucha singing for us, and Tessie has sing. Wow, I didn't know. Yeah, Tessie, and again, fun fact: Tessie and I used to work in the same building once upon a time. So good to see you, Tessie. So it's like, yeah, so like does feel like a beautiful family reunion, and yes, everyone's saying welcome, welcome. Welcome. So as I was saying, would love us to make this a discussion. Definitely Johnny, Mucha, and Tolu will be kind of in the ring having the conversation. But please, in the chat, if you have any comments, any questions, please put them in and we'll bring them in. But also, I'd actually like to start off as we get into this conversation by asking everyone in the chat, when you think about change, what emotion comes to mind for you? Enahora saying hope-filled with adrenaline and slight anxiety. Okay, I see anxiety coming through. Please, in the chat, courage. I love that, Daniel. You see, clearly Daniel really took a lot from the last session, man. That courage idea really sticking with him. And thank you, Libby, for that session. It was really, really thoughtful and really engaging. Libari saying anticipation. Elsie saying anticipation. All right, cool. So, I mean, I guess as we can already see, you know, there are a lot of emotions that come with change, but often when we drive change in organizations, we make it very cerebral, right? And it's a strategy, it's always here, but never really engage the emotions of people. So in really starting us off, I'd like to start with you, Johnny, to kind of start us with this conversation. Now, you know, where I'd like us to start is by asking you a two-part question. The first one is, we are speaking about navigating change, right? But also thinking around how emotions play a role in navigating change. So the two-part question is, one, how can EQ, emotional intelligence, help us navigate change? But also the second question is, how might we use tools like the 6 seconds brain profile to help us more efficiently or effectively navigate change? So yeah, Johnny would like to start.
Excellent, Katleho. So I'm going to start with your second question first. Oh my goodness, that's a mouthful. So we all had the opportunity to do the brain profiles, and if you didn't, you should do it. So I heard Avril speak yesterday. She was speaking in this panel session on drive and purpose, which is lovely. I'm going to speak today on the middle continuum, which is the decisions continuum. So if we're speaking about change, Katleko, in terms of a tool, and the brain profiles are it's such a fantastic tool. I've used it in huge banking teams and in small one-to-one groups, and it's so practical, and I love the practical stuff. So that decisions strand that we have a look at looks at how we balance risk and opportunities. And, you know, obviously I know Inahora fairly well as a preferred partner. So that kind of that hope and that anxiety, you know, he's really embracing change using both of those. And I know him as a personality and how he can really kind of go from the careful looking at it to the spontaneous, and how we can make sure that we make change happen. So that decision strand on the left-hand side is the evaluation. So, you know, if your bubble is on the left when you've answered that questionnaire, maybe you really avoid risk. Maybe you really look at evaluating, teasing it out, you know, what could work here, what could work there, and you start thinking about the pros and cons and the unintended consequences, and you evaluate a lot. That could lead to some kind of, you know, procrastination, and you're not getting things done if you stuck there. On the other side of the strand of the decision strand, the middle strand of the brand profile is, you know, how we love novelty and change, you know, and Daniel mentioned courage. So how we can really have that courage to go and do something differently and make something work. So it's that, you know, being innovative and, you know, pushing the boundaries and making stuff happen. And of course, you know, neither side is best. And it's really, as the brain profiles do, they put a mirror and they go, okay, how do I embrace change? Am I too evaluative and too risk averse and really want all that detail, which takes me longer to embrace that change? Or do I go in there guns blazing and just, you know, fail forward, which is also an option. Neither is right or wrong, but it's so lovely on the decision strand to see where you are. So that's really a tool. Going back to what you were asking in the first question, Katleho, is saying, okay, you know what, how do we manage emotions and change? And I love what Libby said in our breakout group, where she just said, look, brains are definitely hardwired to dislike uncertainty. So, you know, this is the organ in our bodies that says, keep us safe, like, you know, don't do too much change, like who's going to come and eat us and what are we going to eat? You know, this is a survival organ. So we've really got to understand our brains, and we've got to understand that emotions are there for a purpose. So, you know, whether it's hope, anxiety, courage, anticipation, Labari and Elsie spoke about, is to acknowledge our emotions and to say how they're serving us. We know that all emotions are welcome. And actually, very often as humans, we forget to really go into that feeling side. And what has been spoken about at the conference is, you know, as humans, we think, we feel, and we act. So the feeling is, you know, one of the 3 legs of a 3-legged stool. We've got to think our way into change, but we've got to feel our way into change. And then we've got to decide appropriate action. So the feelings are really help us with being sturdy on that stool to make sure that our critical thinking is good. That's what the World Economic Forum says we need as one of the soft skills for 2025, good critical thinking. We need emotions and emotional intelligence. That's why we have EQ for Africa. And we need to choose right action for right time, whether you're in a business of coaching, facilitating workshops, or any other entrepreneurial business or corporate business. What are the right actions for your business at this point in time? So I hope that answers your two questions, Kaleho, but if it doesn't, please ask again.
No, I mean, I love the insights already. I mean, again, this, expresses the kind of conversation we're going to have. And my biggest takeaway from what you said is, one, that emotions are there for a purpose, right? And sometimes we don't connect with that like they serve a purpose to give us clarity, but also then I loved that three-legged stool framework you use, right? That we need to think, feel, and act. And that if you feeling and thinking without acting, you are wobbly, but if you also thinking and acting without feeling, you also are not balanced, So thank you so much, Jimmy. I think this is really good. And Bree, I think we may also reflect and change from two different perspectives. A, it happens to me and I need to adapt to respond to it, or two, I lead or initiate a change affecting others, right? Yeah, and I love that. And again, it continues to be that balance. And I mean, thank you, Joni. And then I think, Mucha, I'd love to actually, bring it segueing from where Bridge put us or left us, is that balance, right? I mean, you lead, EQ for Africa and really are the driver of this movement. But sometimes, we think about these change efforts as like big and formidable or crazy out there, but sometimes some of the biggest change that needs to happen is here, right? In our own spaces, in the personal space, which can be tough because we can go lead and change organizations, but find it difficult to change ourselves. And so I'd like to maybe with you have a conversation about personal change with a focus on agility, right? The last few months, the past 18 months have been really intense for all of us, and we've had to apply agility in many ways. The question I have for you is, how has the skill of EQ assisted you to remain agile over the last 18 months? How have you leveraged emotional intelligence to remain agile and effective and efficient in the past few months?
Thank you very much. And it's great to be on this panel with these awesome and fabulous ladies. I think the last 18 months have really been a test and of putting into practice some of the things that I have been talking about for very many years. I think I keep telling people that I really have gone into doing myself a lot more as a result of the pandemic than I ever did before. Before I share my insights, as I looked at this question, I thought to myself, what is agility? As I listened to your question, I thought to myself, what is agility? And agility is really about being able to move quickly and easily, being able to think and understand quickly, right? So it speaks to changing, but also changing quicker, not being stuck. And so agility really is about getting unstuck quicker. So not allowing yourself to be stuck in a space, in a decision, in a moment for too long, for longer than is necessary. And something that Joni said is so true, that we would rather, when we are uncertain, the brain likes certainty. And so it is easier to be stuck, right? That for many of us actually is the default, being stuck. So how do we get unstuck? I think for me, what emotional intelligence has done has started with just acknowledging what I am feeling. There are some statements that I use often, and those who are listening, who interact with me will agree. One of those is this idea that emotions are data. Emotions are insight. And the more I realize this, the more I have stopped looking at how I'm feeling with judgment, rather looking at how I'm feeling with curiosity. It has given me the ability to be agile, to move forward. So I think for me, it starts with just recognizing what those emotions are and, being honest with myself about what I'm feeling. And a lot of that is around looking at my emotions with curiosity. Many of us look at our emotions, especially those that make us feel uncomfortable, as though they're our enemy. But I've learned when I approach emotions as data, that I can look at my emotions as an ally. And so even those emotions that make me feel uncomfortable are an ally. They are insight from myself to myself. They're a message. You know, I was on a radio show last night, and we were having this conversation about emotions and emotions being data. And I talked about the fact that when the warning light for fuel comes on in your car, you don't curse the warning light. Oh my goodness, what a foolish warning light. Why is it coming on? No, you appreciate the fact that the warning light is giving you warning that if you don't fuel up, you're going to run out. And so it's the same idea that my emotions are data. They are an aid. And the more I lean into this idea that my emotions are an aid, the easier it is to become agile, because once I know what I'm feeling, I'm able to then work on transforming that feeling. And transforming that feeling comes from peeling back the layers to understand why I am feeling the way I am. What is it that's causing me? What insight can I get? In our breakout sessions today, I was with Libby. We explored the tool on the 6 Seconds website, the one that's built around the blue chip model, that tells you what insight you can gain from different emotions. That is a fabulous tool because you can utilize it to explore. I'm feeling overwhelmed. Well, what insight could overwhelm give me, right? I'm feeling fearful. What insight can fear give me? A lot of us want to shy away, suppress, ignore those emotions that make us feel uncomfortable. But when we dig deeper to understand why, that then helps us to begin on the journey of transformation. So once I have connected with my emotions, I begin to peel back the layers to understand why. I start to transform how I'm feeling because I no longer see this emotion as an ally, as an enemy. And what I've just described is a process that we utilize at 6 Seconds called VET. So whenever you're feeling stuck in your emotions, whenever you're feeling you're not able to move forward, the idea is to vet your emotions. First, by validating them. So I'm feeling this, and it's okay for me to feel that because my emotions are data. And then explore, what does this mean? What insight can I gain from it? What options do I have? And then as you begin to explore, you find that those emotions start changing because now you're using them as a strategic resource. I have learned over this period of COVID more than ever before that my emotions truly are a strategic resource. I just need to connect with them more.
No, I love that, love that. So you're saying the first one is validate, and then explore, and the third one is?
Transform.
Transform, transform.
So whenever you're stuck, just vet your emotions. Validate, explore, and transform. And that helps you to be more agile. The quicker you get into that process of validate, explore, transform, the more agile you are because you're able to then move forward. And like I said, use your emotions as the strategic resource they're designed to be.
Sure, man. Yo, this conversation is just like levels, right? Levels. Yeah, and you know, Mucha, for me at least, just listening to you is that the significance of looking at our emotions with curiosity, and Dali also affirming that, right? Like more curiosity and less judgment. And again, even just that concept of using our emotions as data points. You know, I mean, we're in a world of big data, and the thought that came to my mind is you are your biggest, you know, big data experiment, right? Like, and how do you leverage that big data to make yourself more powerful in this world? So loving it. You know, I guess moving then from a personal perspective on change and emotional intelligence and more to an organizational one, right? So now we have a better sense, and we've been given an effective tool of vetting to get change and transformation to happen in ourselves. Tolu, I'd love to bring you in to start talking about how change happens at an organizational level. Now, you are, you know, I mean, you are in many ways a success story in that, you know, we heard earlier on that only 70% of change initiatives actually succeed, and you have been able to be in like that 30%. So, you know, I would love to just hear from you. I mean, just what your experience has been with regards to organizational change, but also what has been at the core of the success of your change and some key lessons that you could share with us as we try to drive change within our organizations.
Thank you, Katleho. Can I confirm that you can hear me okay? Great stuff, great stuff, great stuff. Okay, first of all, great to be here. My mind is full. Wow. The kind of conversations I heard yesterday, today, wow. Okay. I mean, I've worked for almost 3 decades now, and I've been privileged not just to be part of change, I've been privileged to lead some from an HR perspective, but also from an organizational perspective. The latter doesn't come often. The ones from an HR perspective come quite often because it happens all the time. And in my journey, and I think it depends on which studies you go to, there are 3 top reasons why.
Oh man, I think we might have
fail. And I told myself that actually I want something different. So a Deloitte study said one of the major reasons that changes fail is because of resistance by employees. And then it gives the other 2 reasons to lesser extent as sponsorship and unrealistic expectations. But the biggest by far, when change leaders have been asked the question, 82% of them have actually pointed to resistance by employees as the major reason that changes fail, which means therefore, as wise practitioners that want to succeed, that's where we need to go to. That's where we need to be very proactive about to go to. I stumbled on the mathematics behind change, also sometime in my journey, my other life, that says change multiplied by acceptance equals effectiveness. And it puts the acceptance as the major factor that you then need to play with. Again, you can't hear me talk about change and not talk about this formula because it simplifies it for me so much. The acceptance level depends on how involved, therefore, your people are. So this model actually then puts mathematics into it to say, if the technical content of change is 8 and the acceptance is 3, you're going to get 24. Even if you reduce the technical content of change to 7 and you raise the acceptance, you're going to get 70. Let's say you raise the acceptance to 9 or 10, you're going to get much more effectiveness. So therefore, my own theory has always been go to the people, go to the people. Now, let me issue a disclaimer. The change that is mostly on my mind as I talk this morning is one that is still early. It's very early. So I would not even say I have been successful. I would not even say my organization has been successful. But one thing I would say, the trajectory is good. I love the trajectory. I love the way things are coming along. I love the very early signs of what we're seeing. And it's on that basis, therefore, that I can share what I will then be talking about. So what has been at the core? The change I'm talking about is it's a culture transformation that we started just a few months ago. And if you've dealt with change, that's probably the deepest, most complex, because at times it's intangible, you can't touch it, but it is where you get your most effectiveness. So what has been at the core? I think the major thing that has been at the core of this change, and all changes I have seen successful, is people, right at the center of the change. And I put it in different dimensions. It's people from the moment of defining what are changes. So when we started the journey and we were putting together scripts around how do we put words behind our purpose? How do we put words behind our vision? How do we ensure that the values we harp on are the values that really speak to the purpose of this organization? We brought the people into the room. That was important because it gave a flair of the grassroots, a flair of the corridors to what we were talking about. That was the first thing. The other thing we did was informing a coalition. It was not a coalition of leaders. It was a coalition of people on the streets, people that can relate, people that can have a very frank, honest conversation without being concerned about the politics of it. They just want to get to the bottom of the conversation. We involve the people in it. We also involve our people in conversations. So as we defined the values that will take us to the land we were going, the promised land, we then had sessions after sessions after sessions that looked like no holds barred sessions. So, and after those sessions, we'll get people coming out of the sessions, and this was not expected actually, coming out of the sessions and saying, wow, thank you for that. For the first time, not only am I allowed to voice my opinion, I actually believe in this thing we're doing. Someone wrote to the HR team to say, I left that session with a spring in my steps, convinced that I have not just joined an organization, I have joined a movement. So that for me is bigger than anything else I can have in bottom line immediately, knowing that culture itself is going to transform over time. It's not going to change tomorrow, and it better outlive us. We've also used our people as, at the center of the conversations we had with people was this big thing around purpose. Now, in all the conversations I've ever had and all the changes I've ever been involved in, I haven't quite put purpose in the center. But this is something that I must confess, I stumbled on as one of the levers we could use, but it has proved so powerful. And what that has done is, we start by saying, this is the purpose of the organization, but how about we settle and understand your own purpose? So our employees have gone through a process, and more often than not in the sessions I attended, it's felt very cathartic. They've gone through a process of really settling down to answer questions, facilitated thankfully by Nauru, who I think is on the line, to answer questions around what do I enjoy doing? If I wouldn't be paid, what is that thing I would still love to do? And people then come away with that. And then we ask the question, can you find a bridge between that place and the organization? For some people, it's been easier than others. But for the people that have immediately found the bridge, it's been a aha moment. Like, oh, wow, I didn't realize that you could actually bring your purpose to work every day. You don't have to think, I wait till Friday night, then I start living my purpose. So that has been phenomenal. I don't even think we have explored it enough. I just think we have stumbled on it, and we need to actually peel it more and more and more and more. One more thing to say, my own lessons about this whole journey that's happened. The first thing is that change is personal. I don't care how sophisticated it is or how scientific it is. If we cannot interpret it into personal terms for people, then actually it's going to stay right there in the air. So organizationally, we need to be looking for language and situations and stories that make change personal for people. The second thing is, no matter how good of a change manager you are, all of us, more often than not, react to change. We react to it. Once in my other life, I used to work for the United Nations, and I had gone on one of my country trips. And for some reason, I hadn't been brought along on this. We were changing offices, and I got back and my office had been changed. My goodness. Oh my goodness. I actually, probably the time that I've noticed my emotion the most, I was angry. I was insecure. I compared my office to my colleague's office. I don't have a door. Why am I in front of the toilet? Why is it this color? I complained about everything. And I eventually got to this point of saying, more often than not, I give change to people. Now I'm a recipient of change, and I'm throwing out my toys and the entire court. So I sort of settled into it to understand we need to empathize more as change leads and as HR people. The third thing to be said about this is be ready to be wrong, because at times on this side of change, you're pushing people, but you stumble on insights, and those insights come from data. Now, let me pause there a bit. It was from Enaura I first heard it. I know it's a universal phenomenon, that emotions are data. I also heard that data, when you press it enough, it confesses. So in other words, if we interrogate the data we're getting, we actually then stumble on, oh, maybe we didn't get it quite right. So be prepared to be wrong. Also, planning trumps plans. So the process of planning the change is bigger than the plan that you scripted in the boardroom that you want to execute. So as a change lead, therefore, your ability to be agile, to dip into your emotion and understand, didn't quite understand it, we need to tweak it as we move along, is important. And then the last thing is, you can't over-communicate. You can't over-communicate in the process. You communicate the what, the where, the why, the how, the who, and the big one is really around the why. Yeah. Why are we changing, and why is this important? Whatever that communication is, you say it, but you also do it. People hear you talk about change, they see the posters, they see the books and the nice gifts, but they must also see you start to reward the change. Otherwise, you aren't going anywhere. Thank you, Katleho. That's what I'm going to send it right now.
You know, we talk about mic drop, and that, like, yeah, it's just like mic drop there. And I mean, some really great insights there, Tolu. And you know, I mean, I like how you actually, it's almost, you come full circle, because the why, you ended there with the last note being the why needs to be clear. And for me, if I were to synthesize what you're saying, is real change happens when we put two things at the core: the people and the purpose, right? When the purpose is clear and we're intentional about the purpose, and link purpose to personal, because I think that anecdote, you literally just gave us all a secret sauce for transformation. That whole thing of linking people's purposes, personal purpose, to that of the organization, that is a secret weapon that I've had the opportunity to use, and it is. I can affirm that it works, right? But then the other piece of it, which is really keeping people central to the experience, because sometimes, especially as leaders, we become so obsessed with the outcomes of change, we don't bring people along. So thank you so much, Tolu, and all the best on this initiative that you're driving. Johnny, I want to come back to you, right? So I think both Mucha and Tolu have really mentioned some really, you know, awesome insights about change. But you know, the thing about change sometimes also for most of us, it can also remain very like philosophical, right? Like, and for someone on the call, they might be like, yo, but like, where do I start, right? Like, where do I start and how do I start? Because it's again, you know, in the consulting work I do, I often find that leaders know that they need to change, or they know where they are and what needs to change, and they know where they need to be, but it's just like the in-between that gets a bit murky, right? So I guess, yeah, the question to you is, if a leader wants to drive change, where would you say they should start, or how should they start in driving a change process?
Okay, so I love that question, and it's how should they start to driving a change process? So that for me, Kaleho, is very different to, so that's driving a change process in a project, as opposed to, as Bridge was saying earlier, you know, the change within. So, you know, using your own emotional data. So I like what Tulupi said, and I would go back to that: change times acceptance equals effectiveness. I love that formula. I think it's absolutely outstanding, and it's spot on the money. So if we just break it down, and Tulupi, if you don't mind, I might be doing this differently to what you do in my consulting business, but it's the change processes that are needed. So let's just say a business wants to add a new service offering or a new product. It's like, what is that technical change that's needed? So we need a project team around that. You know, where's the client needs, where's the client pain, and what's that human need, and how do we do that? I'm doing a conference tomorrow, which unfortunately I can't be on this one, for Vodafone and Vodacom Africa. So it's the whole of Africa, 2,000 people, and they're looking at innovation and hackathons, what change needs to happen. And they're looking at innovative digital money and that kind of thing, you know, so changing, you know, finding new consumption habits of people through Africa. So that change part of Tulupi's formula is the technical innovation. But she so beautifully said, if you're driving a change project, you need to look at acceptance. And I loved your example, Tulupi, is that, you know, that can be an innovative thing and it's really new, and Vodafone are going to take the lead on it, or Vodacom. But the acceptance, the people dynamism around it, the personalities and understanding them and helping them with their EQ is really important. So, you know, if I'm driving a change initiative in business, I look at what's the opportunity, technical, process, project, and then how do I get the right people around the table? And change also has got different stages. So you need some rebels in the beginning of change to be disruptors. You know, so those personalities, like, let's throw out all the toys and find something new and exciting. And then as you go through the next phase, it's like a pilot phase where you want someone who is going to enable to take a concept and to put it into a pilot. And, you know, that's a different type of personality and driven by different emotions. Then you need someone who's going to scale it up and say, okay, if we're scaling up something, you know, now let's put all processes into place. So it's this change times acceptance, but understanding that different people accept at different rates and play to their strengths in different ways. And if you understand EQ and personality, you can drive acceptance. So I'm steeped in the Enneagram, Katlego. So I look at 9 different personalities and how do we get the right personalities at each stage of change, and then we'll get effectiveness happening in different ways.
Yeah, no, thank you, Joni. And I guess, I mean, I'm actually only coming into appreciation of the Enneagram now, but again, going back to at least the point you started us with, that whole, like, the tools, right? The tools are there, it's now using the tools that give us the data that Mucha was speaking about to then put them into this formula and push the data as Todu is saying, so that the data will confess to us what change or how change ought to happen. So I mean, I'm loving how, I guess, the conversation is coming together. Now, Mucha, I'd like to come to you, right? Again, to say, okay, you know, Tolu kind of started to give us an idea of change. Joni has kind of, and again, pushed this whole thinking around how to think about elements of change. But let's make it practical, or let's bring it back to, like, an example, right? So, you know, I'd love for you to share with us an example experience, a case study of an organization that you have had to support with a change process. And what are some insights that you have gained through that journey of helping that organization in that change?
Thank you, Katlego. I think that's, you know, one of the things that's fabulous about being part of this 6 seconds community is the access to the amazing tools that are available to be able to actually support organizations as they navigate the different seasons they're going through, and as they navigate the different changes that they are going through. And 6 seconds has a suite of tools called the vital signs. And the vital signs tools are really all about picking up on the climate in an organization, especially if I talk about the team vital signs. So this is a tool that really helps you to understand or gives insight into the workplace climate and team dynamics and how engaged the team is. What we know from our work as 6 seconds practitioners is that a lot of people's ability to work and be effective is driven by how they feel. And as much as we have propagated this message that when you come to work, leave your emotions at the door, we know that that is not true. That is not possible. How people feel actually impacts how they show up at work. And so I've had the opportunity to utilize these tools with a number of organizations, but more specifically, if I pull up one particular case study, an organization that's in the financial services sector that was really going through a change. So for them, the change was a change in CEO. New CEO has come in and there's a handover. And in that handing over, you know, the new CEO comes in with a different vision, a different direction that they would like to take. Well, not necessarily a different direction, but just a different way of doing things. And so the conversation we had was around this time of the changeover, and we positioned emotional intelligence as a key tool to help them navigate that change, because the honest truth is people are going to have feelings about this change, and all too often we just focus on the rational side. So we utilize the team vital signs, which, as I said, is a tool that helps us to get the gist of the climate of the organization, and really looking at how the employees' relationship with each other and with the organization. And we get an engagement score from that tool. And it's a great place to start when you're rolling out an initiative. Again, you know, we are really big on utilizing tools. As you said, when you introduced Joni, Joni has a tool that she has co-authored called Resilience Up. And it's a really fabulous tool that looks at, you know, seeing how a measure of resilience for organizations. 6 seconds has the 6 seconds EQ assessment, the SAY. We have the brain profile, which is what people have utilized for this conference. We have amazing tools. And what I've learned is when we think about emotions and emotional intelligence, a lot of times we think about it as something that's very, I don't know, in the ether somewhere. You know, it's not a tangible thing. And yet with our tools, we're able to get tangible results. We're able to get data, emotional data, data that speaks to the emotional piece, data that speaks to the people piece. And when you have that data, and you have conversations knowing what that data is. You help the team to see. It is powerful. So we kicked off our interventions with the team with just a debrief on what their data was. And we had a conversation around some of the initiatives that were going on. The team Vital Signs has a section to it that looks at what are some of the things we should stop doing, start doing, and continue doing as a team in order to navigate, to drive performance. Because the team Vital Signs, or the Vital Signs suite, is built around research conducted by 6 Seconds that sought to identify the key drivers of performance. And 6 Seconds identified 5 drivers as essential for driving performance, sustainable performance in any organization. Those 5 drivers are trust, which is at the core, right? Trust is the biggest contributor to driving performance. Then we have change, teamwork, motivation, and execution. So having done the assessment, we were able to see where the team was. And what was interesting to learn was they were very high in teamwork, very low in change, which made sense, right? So that's what we were looking for, what we expected. But there's something about seeing it on paper that really unearths conversations that are very different to when I come in as a consultant and just say that this is what you're going through. When people can see it, and we have great graphics that just help to show, and we're able to show how these drivers and where they are in these drivers actually influence the overall engagement score. And they were within the average for organizations, which is actually low. Generally in organizations, engagement levels are actually around the 25 to 30%, which is quite low. So they were within the norm, or slightly above the norm. And so we're able to then put into place initiatives based around the data and to build our program. So then training or coaching doesn't just become a tick box, doesn't just become something you're doing just, guessing, but it's built around data. And so we rolled out a program that ran, and actually, funnily enough, we started this pre-COVID. And so the program ran into COVID, and as a result of COVID, actually got extended. And what happened for this team was amazing, because the work we did actually set them up for navigating COVID and continuing to navigate change. And so for us, it was really exciting to be part of this initiative where we're using data that then fuels the conversations we're having. And at the end of it, we're able to do an assessment again and show the impact, show how, as a result of these initiatives we've rolled out. And as an organization, we roll out a number of initiatives. And we rolled out some elements of training, some elements of coaching, some elements of mentoring. We also supported the organization to roll out internal initiatives. And before I hand back to you, Kathleen, I'll just give you one example. So I remember when we were having the conversation about areas of development, one of the things that came out very strongly was around communication. And the team was talking about how, and I think Tolu mentioned this, that you cannot over communicate. So the team talked about the idea that there were challenges around the communication front. And one of the things that came out that was just so interesting to me, because it was a very small tweak, was apparently a meeting that they would have every week that was called a management meeting. And so the team felt, well, you're calling us for a management meeting, but because it's called a management meeting, it's not our meeting. So we are here to listen to management, right? And at the same time, management feels we're having a management meeting every week so that we can let you know what's going on. But the team's coming to this meeting feeling as though, well, we've come to listen because it's a management meeting. And so just having those conversations and being able to tweak, so now we're talking about a all hands on deck meeting. It's amazing to me how something like that can actually be the driver of resistance to change. Yeah, so I think that was the interesting journey we had with that organization, and that's just one. And we're actually looking forward, we're going to be publishing an actual case study in collaboration with 6 Seconds on the work we did with that organization.
Spot on. Spot on. Thank you so much, Mucha. And I think, again, that makes it very practical, and also goes back to where I think Joni was about, the whole thing of starting. And I think when I think about it, even in the work I do, the most important and powerful thing you can do for a person or as an organization, if you're coaching them, so if you're coaching an individual or working with an organization through change, is to put a mirror in front of them, right? Like to say, hey, this is it. And there's nothing that does that better than coaching. I mean, than data, right? And Mucha, you speaking to that like when the data is clear, right? Say, here's the data. It's easier then to drive what Tolu was speaking about, that whole thing of moving from resistance to acceptance, right? Because now, like, I can't deny it anymore. Like now, it's not Joni or Tolu's opinion on what needs to happen. We can all see the data, and then we can then start the constructive conversation. So I love that. Thank you, Mucha. Tolu, we're running out of time. So the last question, I'll throw it to you. And really this one is around that balance between, there's been a lot of study of the correlation between a leader's emotional intelligence and effective change efforts, right? And that correlation that with higher leadership competency or leadership emotional intelligence, there's greater change. Now, what I'd love to get from you is like, what has been your experience of that balance? But also, what are some insights that you could share to leaders who are trying to drive change based on that idea?
Thank you, Katleho. I am one of those that really believes that everything rises and falls with the leader. Maybe I actually do it to an extreme. And the reason is you are the leader, you're in front figuratively, and you are actually being watched and modeled and mirrored. So if a leader is not led by their EQ, or they deliberately do not take cognizance of that, then the team is in trouble. I have worked with different leaders, and I have seen a leader's demonstration of their lack of EQ in a change effort, by the way they've been silent, by the way they have been poking the change itself, even though the change is meant to be led by the leader, by the way they have questioned the change, even though they're meant to be leading the change. So the body language of the leader tells me where they are in their own, in the spectrum of EQ, and it also determines whether or not they're able to be effective. So some of the things that I would say to leaders is, number one, don't kid yourself by saying, I can be a silent participator. It's not gonna happen. It's either you're behind the change or you're not. And you can be a rebel to the change. You can deter the change by simply saying nothing. Because you're leading and people can watch you even when you do not know you're being watched, you not saying anything in support of the change, therefore, does damage to the change. Because it tells people that you're actually not really for it. If HR is the one leading the change, at that point in time, this is just an HR event. It's an HR agenda. The entire leadership is not behind it. So the first advice is you must work on that as a leader. You must work on, how do I come across? And you must also throw your hat into the ring. Ask questions like, how can I help? What can I say? Where can I show up? How do I lend support to this change? That's the first thing I would say. The second thing I would say, and in favor of EQ, is to say, and it goes back to what you just said, Katleho, all leader, you need to get some self-awareness. I don't know about Kenya. I know a bit about South Africa. I was based there. I've been based out of South Africa for 7 years. So I know that we share some things across the African continent. Awareness as leaders is not exactly great. And it depends on where you go. People's sense of what, I'm a Christian. Even in the Bible, Jesus asked his disciples, what do people say about me? So your awareness is not just, this is who I think I am. Your awareness should stretch to, how is my impact on the change being felt? So all leader, you need to check that out. You need to check your own awareness. Do I know me and the way I'm coming across? But you also need to check other perception. It's very, very easy for perception to be wrong, but also it's your duty as a leader to seek to change that perception if it's wrong. So that's the second thing I would say. Get some self-awareness, get some other awareness, and do something about it. The third thing I would say is, you need a coach. I'm an advocate of coaches. I've been using coaching since 2006. I still have a coach in South Africa as we speak. A couple of my sessions have been done virtually. And I think a coach is always good for leaders because they're not judgmental. They don't have anything to win or lose per se. It's not HR trying to convince you to go one way or the other. The coach can help in mirroring what you're being to yourself. So one of the ways in which I've used coaches actually is to interpret some of the feedback I'm getting. So a leader can also do that. You can use a coach to help you navigate this journey. As I prepared for this conversation, and as I sat in yesterday's conversation, I started to get thoughts and ideas about our current change. And this is me as a facilitator of the change, still working on what can we do differently. That's the way the leaders of change should be, actually. And I'm not talking leadership from an HR perspective, from a business perspective. You need to be thinking, this change needs to be successful. How can we make it successful? You also need to therefore build your own plan and your own purpose around exactly what am I going to do as a leader to ensure that this change is successful. That's where I'm going to rest it, Katlego. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Tolu. I mean, some really great takeaways, right? Get behind the change, build self-awareness, get yourself a coach to kind of, like check yourself, right? So
Yes.
I often say with leaders, check yourself before you wreck yourself, because that's what happens with many leaders, right? And then lastly is plan for the change, right? Be intentional about how you go about it. So Tolu, thank you. Some really beautiful, great insights here. Man, this has been such a wholesome, full, beautiful conversation. And I mean, I'm walking away with so many thoughts, reflections, tools and resources that I can apply to my work. But in South Africa, Tolu, as you said, we always say, there's a saying, which means, well, there's no direct translation, but it's, well, essentially it's like all good things must come to an end, right? And as we bring this good thing to an end, what I'd love to do is now turn it back to everyone in this room. So we're gonna actually merge our closing now with the debrief for the day. And so I'd like everyone to pause for a moment and just think about what today has been about for you. So today's session, what it has been about for you, and what's your biggest takeaway from today. So our theme for today has been enhanced change readiness. And so what I'm inviting everyone to, in the chat, if you will, what has today been about for you, or what has been your biggest takeaway from the conversations we've had today? So if you will, in the chat, please just share your reflection, because also, I mean, reflective practice is very critical for leadership development. So as we, synthesize what we've learned today, just going to invite everyone to take a moment to say, what has today been about for you? And Bridget hitting us off saying, change the way of changing. Okay, Bridge, I'll actually invite you to come on and share that with you, share it with us. But Hamira is also saying, recognize, feeling, and emotion are data for change. For sure, Hamira, spot on. Mucha saying, at the heart of change is acceptance, right? That formula, that acceptance is really what brings about change. So inviting everyone, please, in the chat, what was today about for you, or what was your biggest takeaway from our conversation? And Bridge, maybe, would you mind just sharing a bit more about what you put in the chat?
I think it comes from the fact that you can't solve a problem by being at the same level. So if you have struggled with a change effort and it hasn't produced results, you better examine your way of changing and maybe bring some superpower emotions or whatever other support leverages you have. And sometimes we don't do that. We keep on almost playing the same record at the same groove, and it doesn't work.
Yeah, no, spot on. Spot on. I think you've touched on something, I guess, Mahatma Gandhi, right? So be the change we want to see in the world, and that change actually starts with us. I also see in the chat a few other people, Nogubong saying, being mindful of the stories we tell ourselves about change. Oh, that is so powerful. And Hamira again saying, over communicating is nonsense. Oh, I love that. Well, I guess I'd love to also hear more about that, Hamira. And Libera saying, my biggest takeaway is crafting my story on change. All right, awesome. And from Tolulupe, leaning into my emotions, VET. Yes, we learned that. Validate. What was it? Validate, explore, and then transform. Wow, such really great insights and perspectives coming here. But yes, we're bringing this day to an end. again, this has been such a beautiful story that we've been on. Yesterday, we started on, renewed clarity of purpose, really had such really robust conversations about the significance of purpose, right? And Tolu even touching on it today. Today, we now spoke about enhanced change and readiness. And tomorrow, now we move on to moving from purpose to navigating the change. Tomorrow, we then move into having a conversation about sustained vitality and well-being. So how do we now ensure sustaining that emotion? Yeah, man, what a beautiful day. Maybe as we close now, I'm going to ask everyone in the chat again, what's one emotion that you are currently feeling right now? Again, getting in touch with ourselves. What's the one emotion that you are currently feeling as we close off today? I see Tolu really thinking about this one. Nancy is still reflecting, saying, learning from failure. Yeah, failure is such a critical part of the change, right? And leaning into it and embracing it. Okay, so yeah, what's one emotion that you're feeling right now? Tiru saying acceptance, Mucha saying excited, hope, bridge, Duyong saying anchored, Muchusoli saying your emotion, okay, reflecting, Nogobonga saying hope, and definitely there's so much hope coming out of this conversation. And once again, just want to say thank you so much to everyone who's been involved in making this conversation possible. A special thanks to my guests, Mucha, Johnny, and Tolu. Thank you so much, ladies, for the thoughtfulness, but also thank you for all the facilitators who are running the different breakout rooms and the different sessions throughout the day. But also thank you. I mean, the thing about sessions or experiences like this, you're in a room of formidable human beings, right? Like if I look at the chat, I'm like, yo, Elsie's commenting, Libby just said something. I'm like, easily, these people could have been on the panel today, right? And it's just like that beauty of just iron sharpening iron throughout this week. But yeah, with that, thank you so much, everybody. Mucha, maybe is there anything I'm leaving out as we close, or anything you'd like to jump in and share or remind us as we officially bring this day to a wrap?
It's been a fabulous day of learning. And the only announcement I would add is to look out for an email with the links for the handouts you will need tomorrow. Tomorrow we're talking about well-being. It will be another packed day, exploring how we can leverage the power of emotional intelligence for greater well-being and vitality. So thank you very much from all of us, part of the EQ for Africa team. A big shout out to our facilitators from the breakouts today, Libby and Anohubonga and Kerry. Thank you so much. The feedback from all the breakout sessions is that it was fabulous. And thank you again to the panel. It was great to be part of that powerhouse panel as we explored. And thank you to you, Kat, for moderating the session so well. We're always happy to collaborate with you. That is it. Somehow there's a feeling of wanting to elongate it, but we've come to the end of the day. Thank you very much, everyone, and we'll see you tomorrow. Remember, 9 a.m. East Africa time. So wherever you are, just check to see what East Africa time is for you. 9 a.m. East Africa time, we kick off again. I know there were some who said they struggled with the link that was sent yesterday. We are using the same link. So if you have to go back to the email from day one, that is the link we're using. See you tomorrow, guys. Bye, everyone.